You're listening to Missing Persons, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, DNA ID, Zodiac Speaking, Scene of the Crime,
Beyond Bizarre True Crime,
Citizen Detective, and
Campus Killings.
All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its creators, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss a missing persons case on this podcast, please be sure to visit missingpersonspodcast.net. This episode may contain unsettling or disturbing subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
If you'd like to support Missing Persons and get VIP access to things like ad-free listening, early preview episodes, and bonus content of not only this show, but for every other podcast on the AbJack network of indie podcasts, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcast. For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll unlock a variety of listener benefits, and you'll be supporting the show in the process. Your support is greatly appreciated.
Welcome to Missing Persons, a podcast dedicated to spreading the word about people who have vanished under mysterious or unexplained circumstances and the family members who are looking for answers. I'm Jess Betancourt.
And I'm Mike Morford. Together, we created this podcast to help give a voice to people who continue to search for their missing loved ones. In some cases, even after decades have gone by. In each episode, you'll hear from Jess giving listeners the backstory and the basic facts of the disappearance.
Then Mike will speak with someone who's intimately connected to the missing person, and his guest will share their story with us. So sit back and enjoy this episode, and who knows, maybe you can help us find someone who's missing. Jennifer Wix was born on August 16, 1982. In 2003, she was a young mother living with her aunt and her cousin Jeffrey in Robertson County, Tennessee. Her daughter Adrianna had been born on January 14, 2002, when Jennifer was in a previous relationship. Jennifer, the oldest of three girls, adored being a mom and spent all her time with Adrianna, taking her to the zoo and other mom-daughter outings. In the fall of 2003, Jeffrey, her cousin, introduced her to his friend Joey Benton, and the two started dating. Their relationship seemed great at first, and Jennifer and Adrianna quickly started spending a lot of time at Joey's family's large compound in the Owens Chapel community of Cross Plains in Robertson County. But just 2 months into the relationship, there was an incident that terrified Jennifer. She told her mother, Kathy Nail, who was living in Las Vegas at the time, that they had argued and Joey pulled a gun and threatened to shoot her, Adrianna, and himself. Jennifer got the heck out of there with her daughter, and she and Joey broke up. Jennifer and Adrianna moved into Kathy's basement apartment when Kathy quickly moved back to Tennessee. But the breakup didn't last. 21-year-old Jennifer slowly got pulled back into Joey's life, and they resumed dating. In December 2003, there was an incident at Kathy's home that involved Joey kicking in the door and Jennifer's sister Casey calling the police. Jennifer and Joey left. After that time, Joey was no longer permitted at Kathy's home, and Jennifer took Adrianna and moved into a large, partially finished barn-like structure on the Benton family property. Jennifer was still in contact with some members of her family, and they learned that this barn was something of a party spot used by Joey and his friends. Drinking and drugs were present at many gatherings. The barn wasn't winterized, so eventually Jennifer and Joey and Adrianna moved into Joey's parents' house, a small 3-bedroom ranch, and lived there with Cindy and Joe Benton. Many other members of the reclusive Benton family lived on the larger property. In February of 2004, Jennifer and Kathy began to mend their relationship and reconcile, and Jennifer started to spend some time with her own family again. She didn't have a car, so Joey would bring her to Kathy's house and drop her off as he was not allowed inside. Jennifer's family continued to be concerned about the relationship and stories Jennifer told them about the barn parties, weapons in the Benton home, and Joey's temperament. On Tuesday, March 23, 2004, Kathy saw Jennifer and Adrianna, who had been to the doctor for an infection. That was the last day that Jennifer's family saw her and her daughter. On Wednesday, March 24th, Jennifer called Kathy from Joey's parents' house in a state of distress about arguments that were going on in the Benton household. She wasn't getting along with her mother-in-law, and she was arguing with Joey. Kathy could hear yelling and Adrianna crying in the background. But Jennifer told Kathy she didn't want her to pick her up. She would stick it out. They promised to talk the next day. The last person known to speak with Jennifer was her father, Michael, who talked with her at approximately 11 a.m. on Thursday, March 25, 2004. Michael Wix later told detectives that he and his daughter spoke on the phone for about 2 hours around noon. Jennifer was upset and said she wasn't getting along with Joey's mom, who scared her. She told him that Joey was at work in Franklin, Kentucky, but was on his way home and they were going on a picnic. Jennifer said she was looking forward to seeing her dad in Manchester that coming Sunday. There is some indication that Jennifer also spoke with her aunt sometime during the day. Her aunt agreed to leave a key for her in case she and Adrianna needed to come to her aunt's house, 2.5 miles into town. This phone call has not been verified. Jennifer's family never heard from her again after that time. She and Adrianna simply disappeared. The next day, Friday, Kathy, Jennifer's mom, became very concerned when she couldn't get hold of Jennifer. She started calling around to all the family members looking for her and Adrianna. Jennifer's sister Heather finally got in touch with Joey, and he told her that they broke up and he dropped Adrianna and Jennifer at a local gas station. Meanwhile, he told Jennifer's cousin Jeremy that Jennifer had gone to a friend's house. He was referring to Jennifer's friend Helga. Kathy called Helga first thing on Saturday morning, and Helga told her that something was very wrong because she hadn't heard from Jennifer. Kathy filed a missing persons report for Jennifer and Adrianna on Saturday the 27th. The Robertson County Sheriff's Department issued a bolo for Jennifer and Adrianna, and on Saturday night sent a deputy over to do a welfare check at the Benton home. Joey was the only one home and said the officer needed a warrant to search the place. Joey told the deputy that essentially he and Jennifer argued, they broke up, and she asked for a ride to a grocery store in Cross Plains so she could use the phone. Joey said he drove her and Adrianna to an Exxon gas station near exit 112 off Interstate 65 around 9:30 p.m. on March 25th. He parked in the church lot across the street and watched them leave in a white 4-door early 90s model midsize car. He did not see the driver. Joey told the authorities that the following day, the 26th, Jennifer came to the Benton house alone, driving the same white car. She asked for her income tax refund money because she had deposited it in Joey's parents' account since she didn't have her own. But the Bentons weren't home, so she gathered some items, including some clothing and Adrianna's diaper bag, and left, saying she would be back for the funds. But she left behind many personal items and essentials that she would not leave without, including her glasses and Adrianna's car seat. Jennifer's family found this whole story extremely suspicious. They knew of no one in a white car Jennifer would have left with. She had a small circle of friends, all of whom were known to her family. She never would have left those important items behind, and Joey had identified a make and model of car to the police that did not exist. The family also learned that on Thursday, March 25th, Joey had gotten a ride to work in Franklin from Jeffrey, Jennifer's cousin. Jeffrey informed the police that Joey walked up to him after taking a call at work and abruptly said, "We have to leave now." Joey said it involved a family matter. They left Franklin and drove back to Springfield. That was the last day anyone heard from Jennifer. The Benton family initially agreed to searches of their home and property. On March 29th, Robertson County Sheriff's deputies conducted a walkthrough of the home, looking for anything pointing to foul play or signs of struggle. Police say they have conducted several searches of some areas of the property that turned up no sign of Jennifer or Adrianna, including draining a pond on the property. The Benton family was questioned but claimed to know nothing. After 4 searches, they stopped cooperating with the investigation. Joey did submit to a polygraph, which he passed. He declined to take a second. Kathy Nail took time off work to plaster the area with flyers about her missing daughter Jennifer and her granddaughter Adrianna, and try to drum up any leads, but none were forthcoming. the Robertson County Sheriff's Department collaborated with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, or NCMEC, to obtain national publicity for the case. Many tips were called in, but none led to finding the pair. According to Medium, on the third anniversary of Jennifer and Adrianna's disappearance, detectives admitted the case was now being investigated as a double homicide. Detectives said they had tracked down leads in California, Florida, Michigan, and Oklahoma and found no trace of the missing pair. Lieutenant Bennett told reporters that his agency assumed that the mother and daughter were no longer alive. Quote, "With all these sightings and nothing concrete, we have to presume they are dead," he said. His agency later worked with NCMEC to release an age-progressed photograph showing what Adrianna might look like as a 9-year-old in July 2011. Again, tips led nowhere. In 2013, the case was reclassified as a homicide. Robertson County authorities held a press conference saying they believed Jennifer and Adrianna were dead. Quote, "We've developed some new information in the past several weeks that brings us to the conclusion that there was foul play involved," Sheriff Bill Holt announced. He went on, "We are pursuing that as we speak in a renewed effort between the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and the Robertson County Sheriff's Department," end quote. In an accompanying press release, the Robertson County Sheriff's Department said, quote, "Despite countless hours of investigation and numerous interviews over the past 9 years by Robertson County deputies and other law enforcement agencies, Joey Benton's assertions of taking Jennifer and Adrianna to the grocery store, the Exxon, and then seeing Jennifer on the following day were never independently corroborated," end quote. Sheriff Holt would not come out and say that Joey was a suspect. He would offer only that no one had been eliminated as a suspect, including Joey. Joey's grandmother, Carol Benton, spoke to the Tennessean. She claimed that the family had been cooperative initially. She said, quote, "I'm sorry she went missing, don't get me wrong. We loved that little girl, but she's not on our property. We don't know nothing about it," end quote. The Bentons refused to permit any additional law enforcement searches of their property at the time. According to the Tennessean's 2013 article, quote, "The last time investigators asked to search the property was several years ago," Carol Benton said, adding that the family refused then. However, she acknowledged, "I don't think they ever had another suspect other than Joey," end quote. In February 2014, then Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam announced that he was issuing a $15,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for the disappearances of Jennifer and Adrianna. The family has raised an additional $10,000 for the reward fund, which remains at $25,000. Jennifer's mother, Kathy, and her sister, Casey, have made it their mission to keep Jennifer and Adrianna's case in the public eye. They have hosted vigils, bike rallies, balloon releases, and billboards. They've kept the case in the forefront by using social media, and in 2021 conducted a private cadaver dog search of some of the Benton family property. The dogs alerted in the woods, but digging yielded nothing, and there has been no follow-up by law enforcement. In 2022, Tennessee officials released another age-progressed photo of Adrianna Wix. As of 2023, the case has been assigned to a new detective within the Robertson County Sheriff's Department. If anyone listening has any information on the disappearance of Jennifer and Adrianna Wix, please call the Robertson County Sheriff's Department at 615-384-7981 or the TBI at 1-800-TBI-FIND. Mike Morford sat down with Casey Robinson, Jennifer's sister, to talk about her sister's case. That conversation is coming up after a word from our sponsors.
Welcome to Missing Persons Case. I want to thank you for coming on to discuss your sister and niece's case with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This is a really tragic case because there's, not one person missing, but two. There's a lot of reason to suspect foul play. I know this is something your family's had questions about and been going through for, coming up on 20 years. How have you and your family been able to cope with this long ordeal for almost 2 decades now?
We kind of didn't have a choice. Just like losing a loved one from any kind of tragic accident. Like, I just kind of compare it to that without the closure. Keeping their story alive and getting them the justice that they deserve, that's a whole other story. It's not an easy task by any means, and having to stay on top of it and constantly, keep their story in kind of like the local areas and keep people talking about it is probably the hardest part of that, because so often, especially with longer cases like this, like ours, they go kind of cold and forgotten. So, I mean, just as far as coping, I don't really feel like we had a choice around that. And we just kind of did the best that we could and just kind of stuck together. And there's definitely been some family things that have gone on that have kind of separated parts of our family. If you look into our story, you'll see and read about. But my other older sister, my mom, my grandmother, and myself, we just kind of stick together and kind of fight the fight for Jennifer and Adrianna. Yeah.
And that's got to be, you sort of touched on it, but, if they were gone as a result of a car accident or something like that, you'd at least, you have some kind of closure and that what happened to them. But it's got to be especially tough not having any answers and wondering all this time what happened.
Yeah, for sure. People ask us, about the closure part all the time. And I just, after almost 20 years, I feel like that's really what we're searching for. I've did a lot of interviews lately with different podcasts to keep their story out there. And, they're always like, what is the main thing that we can help with? And at the end of the day, and my mom will agree, like, we just want to find Jennifer and Adrianna and lay them to rest. If we never found out who did it, that's kind of like a whole separate piece to it. And you'll see kind of like with law enforcement, like, that's their main goal. Our main goal is where Jennifer and Adrianna, because there's always like that thought in the back of your head. Like, I mean, you hear stories all the time in cases where they just show up out of nowhere. They've been here for all these years, and we don't believe that in our hearts. But, that kind of closure would help us kind of like feel at peace. And then, like I said, if we never found out who did it, that's a whole separate thing.
Before we get into the details of the case and what happened to Adrianna and Jennifer, can you tell us a little bit about them and what they were like?
Yeah, so Jennifer was my oldest sister. She's one of 6 total sisters. She's got 3 on her dad's side and myself and another sister on my mom's side. And she always had a good relationship with her dad and his family and his parents. She was really close to a couple people on that side of the family, but she always lived with me and my mom and my other sister. And she was, I'm trying to think, she was born in 82. So I was born in 88, 6 years older than me. And you have children too. I have children. Just having a sibling that's that much older than you, they're always like helpers in the family, right? So mom, because I don't have a lot of memories, and I know that sounds really crazy, but I mean, I was young-ish whenever this happened and kind of all in my own world. And so I have memories, but a lot of them I can't get to easily. And I don't know if that's like a trauma thing or what. It probably is. But, my mom has a lot of those memories and shares them with us. And she just says Jennifer was always like really maternal with me and always wanted to help with me as a baby. And then as we got older, she and I were, I guess you would say, we were really close. My other sister is the middle sister. I'm the baby. And so middle children always kind of get, they say middle child syndrome, but, they were close in their own ways because they were closer in age, but I mean, we were always fighting like siblings, and Jennifer was not, I would say, super social, not like a social bubbly butterfly. She was more like artsy and into nature and quiet. And I always kind of describe her as like strong, silent type, like strong willed. And I don't know, like some of the things, if you look into them, I describe her as like a Cherokee princess. Like we have Cherokee Indian in us. She just kind of reminds me of like Pocahontas, like in the nature. So I don't know. She had a baby at a really young age, and a lot of people look down on that kind of thing, especially whenever, in our case, who was the father of the baby kind of came into question, and now we know who Adriana's dad is, and have a good relationship with him. But people kind of look down on that, and so she had kind of like a harder time as she got older and whenever she had the baby. And she kind of blossomed into a mom. I watched some videos recently, really the only ones that I have, of whenever the baby was born in the hospital, and just seeing like how soft and loving she was with Adriana. She was a really good mom, and Adriana was really like her only care in the world. Like she didn't have a car, didn't have a phone. You read some of these things about our case that are kind of important as to what happened to them. Those things are important, those little details. She didn't have money, really anything to her name, but she always made sure that Adriana was taken care of. If it was her boyfriend and his family that they were living with at the time, or my mom and our family, or other family members kind of helping out, she just kind of poured everything into Adriana, and she was her life. And the baby, I mean, what can you say about a 2-year-old? I mean, other than, and I might be a little bit biased, she was the cutest kid on the whole planet. My sister worked a lot of like late night shift jobs whenever Adriana was born. And they kind of had like our whole upstairs. We had a giant bonus room, kind of converted that into like an efficiency-ish apartment for them when the baby was born. And I spent a lot of nights up there as a 13-year-old little girl overnight, taking care of Adriana. Like whenever she would wake up in the middle of the night crying and needed to be fed, and my sister's at work, a lot of times it was me. And, I take a lot of pride in that. I had a really strong bond with Adriana. A lot of the photos out there that you see, like I took of her, I don't know, she was like my own little baby doll in a sense. And I mean, just a sweet, bubbly, like didn't get a chance in this world kind of kid. All females in a house sharing a bathroom. And, my mom was a single mom a lot of the time. And so things weren't always like super pleasant. We never hurt for anything, but there was like some drama with my sister. And, so if you go and read any of the things, there's a lot of like old forums, like a topics forum, there's Reddit, things like that. And like sometimes the other side of this story, her boyfriend and his family, they'll come in and they'll start saying things about her past. And it wasn't perfect, but she was just a young teenage mom. So just trying to make it. And so, I mean, I don't look at it in any sort of way. I compare it to a lot of people I know now that are doing just fine. I just think they didn't get a chance,
Sure. And people obviously change and mature, and from life experiences,
right.
they get new, outlooks on life and, that kind of thing. So,
Exactly.
and you sort of segue to it, in 2004 when they vanished, what was home life like for your sister and niece? What was going on with them?
So the year of 2003, there's a lot of kind of details whenever she met this guy, how their dating started and everything. So my mom and myself, my 2 other sisters stayed here, but my mom and myself and my stepdad at the time, he's passed away now, but we moved to Henderson, Nevada, right outside of Las Vegas. And there were some things happening with Jennifer and her boyfriend. And it prompted my mom to just say, okay, this isn't going to work. We're moving back home. So we were only there for 8-9 months ish, and then moved back. And it was just because she called my mom. She was kind of staying with my aunt at the time, but then also with her boyfriend. and his family at the time, just kind of both, because she was dating him and they were getting serious. So she would stay the night over there. Like, her things were over there. The baby's things were over there. Like, they were getting closer. And so she was staying kind of both places. And my mom got like this crazy phone call. She was kind of hysterical on the phone. She had just been dropped off at her grandmother's house, which is close by, probably like 10 minutes away from where her boyfriend and his family stayed. And I mean, he had threatened to hurt himself, my sister, and the baby. And so after my mom got that phone call, it had to have been within like a week or two, we were back home, packed everything up and moved. And luckily my grandmother was trying to sell a house that was available. So we moved right into that house, and she and her boyfriend broke up. And so Jennifer and Adrianna moved in with us, and it was kind of like a 2-floor, like with a walkout basement. Jennifer and Adrianna had 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, like living area, like kind of like an apartment downstairs. Everything was going good. They weren't talking with each other anymore. And then they started talking again at the end of 2003. And when they started talking again, it was not, no one wanted that after what had happened, but, young love kind of thing. And you can't tell a girl that age, kind of what to do. She's an adult. She can make her own decisions, and Adrianna's in her care. So we can't even kind of stop that from happening as much as we want to protect the baby, So she ended up moving back in with him. There was a really nasty experience where I ended up calling the cops, and he came, and they were packing up Jennifer and Adrianna's things to take them back to his parents' house. And they were living in a shed, like barn thing at the time. It hadn't quite got into winter and gotten cold at the end of 2003. And so they were kind of living in like this storage shed thing that you would buy at Lowe's, but it had been, I would say, like halfway remodeled, like how people turn them into tiny homes. So it was kind of like a country way of remodeling it. Like, it was never finished. It had no running water or air or anything like that, but it did have electricity, drywall, carpet. So they were moving their things out of our house that we lived in at the time, and we tried to stop her. And when I say tried to stop her, there was a lot of trying to talk her out of going, but there was also like physical, like, please do not, we shut the door whenever he stepped out of the house, and he ended up kicking our door down, like straight off the hinges, to get her. And they left our house that day without the baby, because I ran into the back room with the baby that was crying, frantically. And the police came, and they weren't there whenever the police came, but they ended up coming back to get Adrianna. And then, after that, there was probably like a month and a half or so where Jennifer didn't really speak to our side of the family. She still had contact with like my aunt, and that part of the family, and then like her grandparents who lived close by, and her dad's side, but she didn't really speak to us just because of what had happened. And my mom ended up, going to court with them. So I have police reports and stuff around that. So there's just a lot of red flags after threatening to hurt them, this instance at our house, and then just kind of like the whole situation, the living situation, like living in this outhouse, and winter coming, just wasn't like, all these things just were not adding up, not good. So Jennifer started talking to us again around mine and my mom's birthday. We share a birthday on February 22nd, and we missed Adrianna's birthday. Her birthday's in January, so we were not included or invited, which that always stings a little bit, like looking back and seeing the pictures at his family's house of this birthday party. But she started to like come around again and start talking. She would visit me and my other sister. We worked at McDonald's in a town over, just down the interstate, because we lived right off the interstate. And she started coming there to let Adrianna play in the play place. And he would always be with her. Like, he wouldn't just let her take the car and go, see her family if she wanted to or anything. Like, it was always them together. Same thing with the phone. Like, he was kind of controlling of that. Like, you could always hear him in the background, like get off my phone. You're using up my minutes. This is 2004 we're talking about. So there were like minutes plans. So he would always hear him in the background, like she's on the phone with her mom or with one of us, and he's yelling at her to get off the phone. And then she came to my birthday party in February, and he wasn't allowed at our house, but he just kind of like stopped on the curb. Our house was kind of like, there was 2 roads where it kind of met on the corner, and he just kind of stopped there, let her come in for a minute to see me. And then, after that, I don't think we really saw him a lot. She started to bring Adrianna around to our house some just for like babysitting, like my mom would babysit the baby. And then, shortly after that, there were the events leading up to like when we think, what actually happened to them happen in March. Adrianna she was sick right before they disappeared, and she called my mom one night, and the baby, like, it hurt for her to go pee. She would cry every time she went to the bathroom. So my mom was like, take her to the hospital. She called, and it was like 10 or 11 o'clock at night on the Monday before they disappeared. I think that was like the 20th or 21st of March in 2004. And so she ended up taking the baby to the ER. She had asked her boyfriend and his family, will you take me? And they would not. His mom she worked in the medical field. She wasn't a nurse, I don't believe, but like she felt like whatever was happening with the baby wasn't anything to take her to the ER for. So she was like, no. So my sister ended up calling my aunt, who lived just less than probably 5 minutes down the road, to come and get them and take them to the ER. And she did. They were there overnight, getting tests run and everything. And the ER nurse just kind of like led them to believe like she had some kind of like vaginal infection that just wasn't common for 2-year-olds to have. And so they left that night. They didn't really have like medicine or anything that they prescribed, but that she had an infection, and told her to follow up with her pediatrician the next day. So my sister's grandmother took her on that Tuesday to her pediatrician, and the pediatrician said, yes, she does have an infection down there, and said it's not common for 2-year-olds, but there can be other causes. It can be from her being in her diaper for longer than she needs to be, that kind of thing. So there was a lot of that happening. There was a lot of fighting going on in my sister's boyfriend's house. So they had moved out of this barn because it had gotten really cold. February in Tennessee is like brutally cold. It can get really low. And so can like the early first few weeks of March. Sometimes it snows. Like, we don't really know. Tennessee's crazy with weather. So they had moved out of this barn and into a room in his parents' house. And they lived like in this little 3-bedroom, like tiny little brick house. I think it had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. And so Adrianna kind of had her own room. It was like a junk room, if you will, where they set her up like a little toddler bed and was trying to teach her to sleep on her own, because she had slept with my sister for all of her life, which my kids did too. And then Jennifer and Joey, her boyfriend, had their own room, and then his parents. And so there was a lot of fighting, a lot of tension. I don't know if you've ever lived, or anyone that listens to your shows ever lived with anyone else. I have personally, and things can get tense if it's a roommate, if it's a family member even that you're not used to living with. In this case, it was parents. His dad wasn't really ever like involved in like their drama, but a lot of people that know Jennifer and Joey, her boyfriend, always said like there was a lot of animosity between Jennifer and his mom, and just said Joey and his mom were very, very close. That was like her baby boy. He's the baby. He has an older sister, and they were really, really close. And so a lot of people even go as far to say like that that she was jealous of Jennifer, a new woman in his life kind of thing.
A little bit of that
So
mother-in-law type situation where, the
yeah,
moms are not approving all the time of their son's
yeah,
love interest. Yeah.
yeah.
Everything you're describing sounds like everything was very volatile. You've got people that have to live sort of under the roof of the parents and sort of go by their rules. And, and, meanwhile, you've got all this other stuff going on. The relationship is not something your side of the family is happy about. So it does sound like it was a very chaotic and volatile situation. I want to move forward. You've got all this stuff going on that you just articulated so well, but then comes March 25th, 2004. That's the last day where it was known that Jennifer and Adrianna were seen. Can you tell us about that day, how it unfolded, and when did the alarm bells go off that they were actually missing?
Yeah, so on the 24th, so that's Wednesday. Thursday is March 25th, is the day that someone in our family or on Jennifer's side last spoke with her on the phone. And then there was kind of like a big falling out in their household on March 24th, the night prior. And she had called my mom, and there was a lot of crying from the baby. Jennifer was upset and crying, kind of explaining what was going on. His parents were in a fight with her, and kind of like yelling at her in the background. You could hear, and just everything was, like you said, very volatile, and tense. And so she spoke with my mom, and my mom was like, just go get the baby that was learning to sleep by herself in that other room. And Joey was in there with her. Just, he could kind of put up with her crying, and he had fallen asleep or passed out in the other room. And my mom was like, just go get her, bring her in there with you. Like, the baby doesn't need to be going through this. Like, that's too chaotic for her. And so she did. And Jennifer, my mom was like, do you want me to come and get you? And Jennifer was like, no, you're not allowed here because of what had happened previously and us kind of not approving of their relationship and everything. And so she was like, I'll handle it. I'll call you tomorrow, which is Thursday, the 25th. She never called my mom, but she did speak with, and in the past, I thought that there were 2 phone conversations on this day. Recently, I have been able to confirm with law enforcement one of the phone calls. The other one, I can't really get confirmation, so I'm not particularly sure that it happened. So we know for sure that she spoke with her dad, her father, who lives in Manchester, about an hour and a half south of where all of this took place. And she spoke with him for almost 2 hours. And he recalls that it's not like typical for her to call and speak for that long, and that she was really distraught. She had told him kind of what had happened the night prior with his family and everything. And he said, or she said, I'm scared. And he said, what are you scared of? And she replied she was scared of his mother. And he said, well, why don't you have someone come pick you up? Get Granny to come pick you up. That was his mom, or, your aunt or your mom. And she was like, no, he's coming home. We're going on a picnic to talk about everything. So that was kind of the last phone conversation that's confirmed and documented that I'm aware of. My aunt also says that she spoke with Jennifer over the phone briefly that day, and that my aunt told her, I'm going to leave a key out for you if you need to come here. And of course, she never did. So of course, at the time, we're just trying to puzzle piece everything together. And my aunt says, oh yeah, I talked to her and I told her this. But again, I can't confirm that And I just kind of thought that to be truth over the years, but kind of recently, as I'm going through investigating and like putting my own timeline together, I can't be for certain if that phone call happened. And I don't know why she would say that if it didn't. So I can't speak on that. And we don't really have a speaking relationship with that side of the family anymore, just due to the case.
So we know the last confirmed, verified conversation is with her father. At what point did everyone realize that they're actually missing? How did that happen?
Yeah, so I mean, the rest of Thursday went on, and my mom didn't. It's not an uncommon thing for, I mean, it's even not now for me to not speak to my mom every day. You know, I know some people do, but Jennifer normally didn't go, I would say, any day without speaking to someone in our family, right? And so she's already had these phone conversations with her dad and maybe with my aunt. And so no one thought anything Thursday, of course. Then Friday rolls around. My mom recalls that like Jennifer was on her mind after what had happened on Wednesday. And, but my mom was at work. And whenever she got home from work, you know, my mom tried reaching out and couldn't really get any response because she had to call my sister's boyfriend or their house phone to get in contact, and no one was answering. And my mom is like, okay, well, you know, something's wrong here, but still, it's not super uncommon for my sister to not speak to speak to her anyway, or someone, for a day or two. And so my mom lays down to go to sleep on, this is Friday evening, and my sister's granny or grandmother calls, and wakes my mom up, or, you know, disturbs her from going to sleep, and is like, something's wrong. Jennifer's missing. So apparently his dad had called my aunt, because if you read in our case kind of timeline, my sister had some IRS, what do you call, tax return money. It was about $500 deposited into their account. And they had called looking for her to give her said money. And then this is whenever my aunt finds out that they had broken up and they had dropped Jennifer and Adrianna off at a gas station, supposedly. And so it just kind of unfolds on Friday evening. And then Friday overnight is whenever everyone starts coming to our house. Everyone starts freaking out, panicking. No one can get a hold of her. No one can get a hold of her boyfriend. He finally answers the phone. My sister calls him and gets him to answer the phone. And he says, I don't know where she is. We broke up and I took her to this gas station. So this is whenever this story starts to unfold. This same night, he's also at a bonfire at his property at that barn where they lived. My cousin was there and two other couples were there. And it was supposed to be a couples thing. And of course, Jennifer's not there as part of Joey's couple. And he tells my cousin that night she's at a friend's house. Because my cousin's like, where's Jennifer? You know, and he's like, she's at a friend's house. So this same night, he's told two people two different things about where Jennifer is. And then Saturday morning, in the super early hours of the morning, is whenever we reported her actually missing. And of course, you'll read in our case, like, it wasn't kind of taken, I don't want to say they didn't take it seriously, but I mean, they were there and they were responsive, but like, it was, they put a be on the lookout out for Jennifer and Adrianna. And like, it really wasn't considered, oh my gosh, she's missing, by law enforcement. Of course, we, the family, are freaking out. No one can get in touch with her. And she knows a select few people. Like, there's not a lot of places she could be. And no one can find her or can get in touch with her. But kind of law enforcement treated it as a runaway case at first, just because Jennifer, as a young girl, before she had Adrianna in high school, I mean, there was a few times when she went to go stay at a friend's house, right? Which is not super uncommon. A lot of what we were talking about earlier, like as you get older and you mature kind of thing. So there's like those details in her past, and they're like, oh, but she's done this before. And it's like, I mean, not to the extent where no one can get in touch with her. Like normally she would be at a friend's house, right? She'd
And
be like,
not with a young child in tow either.
exactly. So again, like one of those, like now she has a baby to think about, you know, and didn't take any of their belongings either, which we can get into all of that. But yeah.
So
that's kind of how it all unfolded.
So I want to back up a little bit, and it's not like his name isn't out there.
Right.
It's Joey Benton, and this property that his parents owned that they lived on was this 80-acre property, excuse me. So I would think, and you can go into this, please. I would think that the police would say, okay, at some point, and I don't know how quickly it happened, but they want to go talk to this family and see what their story is. How quickly did that happen, and what did the family tell police once the police got involved in talking to them?
Yeah, this is where things get really frustrating. So they don't have 80 acres. Their family does kind of live like on a family compound out there. And when I say compound, like that almost comes across like militaristic, and it's not. They just have like a lot of acreage. It's farmland out in the country in the middle of Nowhereville. His grandparents, her boyfriend's grandparents, live like right around the corner, and they have about 51 acres. And then Joey's parents were starting to build a home at this same time. Some of the like pre-work, like foundation and stuff was getting started right next door to where they lived. And that's sitting on 5 acres. And then where they lived in that little small brick house was 1 acre property. So that's about how much they have. There's some other family members too that have a little bit of acreage. But to answer your question, how quickly did they get out there? They got out there on Saturday night. So after we reported them missing, the Be on the Lookout was put out. We did a lot of looking around. One of the first officers that came to help us, who was very helpful, was like, I'm going to go over there, and just do a welfare check. That's what it's called whenever like domestic abuse and stuff like that goes on. So he goes over there. Joey's parents are not home, but Joey answers the door, and the police officer tries to get his statement and ask if he can look around. And Joey responds to him that you need to come back with a warrant. So that was the first kind of like occurrence, like the first like time that they approached their home to do any kind of search. And that was the response they got from Joey himself. He was the only one home, and he said, sorry, you're gonna have to come back with a warrant. So that police officer leaves, comes back to our home, and that's whenever like kind of, I guess you could say, panic really sets in, because this police officer came back and told us, yeah, this isn't right, something's wrong. Like, I don't get a good feeling about this. So that was kind of like the first time, but they did go over and actually get a statement from him. And I'll be honest, I don't know if that statement was at the same time that he said, you need to come back with a warrant, and this is when he got the official statement, or if they went back for that official statement. And I do have police reports and can confirm that, but I think it was maybe that first time. And this is whenever he kind of asked him, like, what happened? Where is Jennifer? But kind of like, no, you can't come in type thing, is what I'm thinking. And then he kind of gets Joey's story of what happened. And this is when you read about our case, you'll hear about the white 4-door car. A lot of people get like really excited and hung up on like his messing up the details on that. And I just like to always make it a point that we believe anyways that this white 4-door car never was a thing. And it's just kind of like a made up story to send people kind of looking in different directions.
And I am curious. So when police do get his first statement, is his story the one where she went to a friend's house, or was his story, I dropped them off at a gas station?
I dropped him off at a gas station. So he doesn't tell police they're at a friend's house. which he does kind of later say she might be with these people because he doesn't know who owns this white car that he's describing. He says he doesn't recognize the car, doesn't know what kind it is, didn't see the people, but he knows these people drive a white car and maybe it could be them, kind of thing, kind of after the fact. But in his original statement, he tells the first time the story of the gas station and the white car coming to pick them up. Jennifer and Adrianna not having any of their belongings. And he does mistakenly tell this first police officer that it was maybe a white 4-door Mustang or a white 4-door Camaro. And there's that doesn't exist. And this guy owned 2 Mustangs at the time, worked on them. And so we believe that's just an error on his part, maybe just not knowing another model of a car to say. I'm not for sure, but it doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. And, I think he was just, if you kind of look up the most common car, it is a white 4-door car. So it's kind of in my brain and theorizing, I'm I think that story was fabricated. And I think it's here's the most common car that I can find. And that original police report, by the way, was amended. And that original police officer lost his, what do you call it? Not a license, but he lost his, affiliation with the police department. And he was let go shortly after that for falsifying his police report, supposedly. Now, he did go to court, and my mom was there in support of him. And he swears, no, that's what he told me. And Joey's dad actually went to the sheriff's department and had that amended and said, my son never said that. So, yeah, that original police report was changed, but I do have the original one.
Why would they think that the officer did something with the report? Did the family accuse him and the police department took their side and how did that unfold? Okay.
Yeah, so that's a short answer. And of course I can't speak for them. And the current relationships that I have with Robertson County Sheriff's Department, that's good. And, I think if you ask them about all of that, you're not going to get a for sure answer. But we know that it happened. My mom was part of all of that and that ordeal and that officer being let go. But there were 2 officers, the first reporting officers, both of them were actually let go shortly after us kind of starting all of this.
So, Joey had originally said come back with a warrant. Did they eventually come back with the warrant and get in the house? And what did they find in the house if they did?
No, in the almost 20 years that we've been dealing with this, we've not been able to secure a warrant. They did go back to the property, and it was on either Sunday or Monday. They did go back and they did a walkthrough of the house and noted that there was not anything out of the ordinary, any signs of struggle, anything like that. Now, granted, it's been a couple of days. So,
not like they wouldn't have cleaned up if there was some.
Right. Yeah, let's just leave that, table turned over or broken glass or whatever, I just feel like that's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 72 hours or more they had.
Were there any of her belongings still there? Purse, things that she would want to have with her?
Yeah, so she didn't take any of their belongings. And in his story, he says that Jennifer came back to their house the next day on Friday without Adrianna, but in that same car, and picked up a few of her belongings, a change of clothes, I can't remember, the diaper bag. There was a few things that he said that she came back and got. But so many of their things, like essential things, my mom notes like the baby's jacket, her only jacket, by the way, like we weren't well off. They weren't well off. Like she didn't have a ton of clothes. She had one little jacket, and it's still cool outside in March. And so that, toothbrushes, like personal hygiene items, like my sister's glasses, because she wore glasses sometimes, like the car seat. There were like so many things. And one of like the most notable, and my mom has told many times before to just kind of help people understand like the gravity of the things they left behind if they did truly just go somewhere. The baby's like favorite toys, like her Elmo. She was obsessed with Elmo, wouldn't go anywhere without it. Like my mom has a tattoo of Elmo on her leg. That's how much Adrianna liked it. Just things like that just meant a lot. Like a mom would not leave that behind.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then there's always devil's advocate of me. Like I'm in a hurry. I want to get out of here as quick as possible. I don't feel safe. Like there's always that side of me. And then there's like the other side of me that's like just all of it is suspicious in itself. And so all of those small details just kind of make us believe in our hearts like the other outcome.
Yeah. And March, you mentioned that temperatures in Tennessee have to be pretty cold, and you're going to not bring a 2-year-old out without their jacket on. If that was her only jacket, that doesn't make sense. Along the way, what level of cooperation were there from Joey and his parents? Did they talk to police? Were they questioned? Did they take any polygraph test, anything along those lines?
So understandably, I guess you could say maybe a little bit, because our family had like suspicions. They were never really cooperative with us. So there's always and always will obviously be that tension there. In the beginning, I know my mom spoke with Joey and his parents at one point to get back Jennifer's IRS tax refund or whatever. And some really weird things were said then, and there was just like a lot of animosity and interference with any investigation or letting us, go out in the woods and search or like anything like that. There was always interference in any search attempt that we did. As far as their involvement with law enforcement, you could say that they have been cooperative to like some extent. And I don't know if his parents were ever polygraphed. I don't think so, although they should be. I do know that I know the people that administered Joey's polygraph, and the sheriff's department, the detective who was on the case for years and years and years that just recently stepped into a different position, actually verbally told me, so I can confirm. So the first polygraph, he passed, and the detective who was on our case said he believes that polygraph wasn't a good indicator because the questions that were asked were like general questions. There weren't any like questions, not like accusing, but I guess his point is they were just general questions like, do you know where they are? I don't know if that was one, but he was just saying like, they're not like questions that would probe for anything or make someone, get nervous. That's the kind of the feel I got from it anyway, from what he told. I do know that they tried to call Joey in for an additional polygraph, which is a different kind, and it was a voice polygraph. And so he was in the process of getting hooked up for that after taking the first one and passing. And his dad was also there in the sheriff department building in another room. And all of a sudden you could hear his dad start shouting from wherever he was in the building. Joey got upset, ripped everything off of him, and walked out of that polygraph. So he ended up not taking that one. And I mean, we've never been able, of course, to get him to take another one, or anyone for that matter.
Were there any searches, organized searches, maybe with cadaver dogs, anything like that used? And if so, what were the results?
Yeah. So if you ask us, and I'll stand by this, even though I know there are searches that have been done, because I don't think law enforcement is lying. If you ask us, there's never been a thorough search done. There have been searches. So the first one being that walkthrough, that original walkthrough where they looked around after a couple days of what actually could have happened. So that was the first one. There was another one that we were helping, and law enforcement was kind of like teamed together, kind of orchestrate. Media showed up, and his parents called it off, asked everyone to leave. So that one never actually happened. There was another one where some property behind theirs, I know that there was a pond drained, something they were looking into there. And they had Tennessee Highway Patrol kind of coming out and doing a grid search in some property back there. And I don't know exactly the areas of where that was done. And then I also know there was one other time, because there's a lot of rumor and people that have said and come to law enforcement about the girls being in concrete. If you remember, I said that they were building a house right next door. And so they supposedly, and I use that word because I have documentation from the people who are supposed to have administered this that say they did not. But law enforcement says that the concrete columns in the foundation under their new home, they use GPR, ground penetrating radar machine, to look into those. And so that is another search that they say happened. And yeah, I have documentation from the people who supposedly administered that say that they never even turned on their machine. So, and then when I picked up the case, my mom's been doing it for years and years and years and years. And I was like, I'm just going to, see if I can drum up some, social media is being used a lot right now to help solve cases. And so I jumped into it and started kind of investigating it my own. And I did come into contact with some family members of Joey's. They contacted me through social media. This was late, what year is it? 2023, late 2021. So it was August, September-ish. They contacted me, and his grandfather, the one with the 51 acres, gave us permission and wanted us to come and search his property. And, he was very old, had a lot of health issues, and I guess, getting towards the end, of his life, and then seeing everything on social media. And I'm sure they talk about it quite a bit, especially whenever we're constantly putting it out there. They reached out to us and said, come search. So of course I jumped right on that, and set that up. So we did that August or September of 2021. There were, I want to say 8 cadaver dogs out there. They did actually indicate, which is the language used in HIT, on human remains in the woods behind his grandfather's house. And we, of course, reached out to law enforcement, and they're like, what do you want us to do about it? And, we asked them to be there, but because it wasn't a police sanctioned search, they did not want to participate. They did end up showing up because Joey and his dad came to interfere with our search. And of course, everyone kind of fears for their safety, and the search members, feared for that as well. But after they hit on human remains, we also contacted someone that does GPR equipment. The GPR equipment found something in their report and said, yes, I think y'all should dig this up. So again, we reached out to law enforcement and they're like, so dig it up.
Jeez.
And so we were, this could potentially be a crime scene. Like, we're trying to be very careful because if you like interfere with stuff, it can totally throw the case kind of thing. But they just seemed like, y'all just do it. There's nothing wrong with y'all doing it, and just call us if you find anything. And so we did. Our private investigator, who is just a godsend and has been doing this case pro bono for years, he and a friend got a backhoe, went out into the woods. We had permission from the family. They said it's totally cool as long as you put the dirt back that you dig up. There's not giant holes. And there was nothing. Mm-hmm. And, that's always in the back of my mind, is like, why did these dogs, I have video of these dogs indicating not just one, but multiple dogs. And so when we took it to law enforcement, they're like, it could be many things. It could be like an old Indian burial site. It could be runoff from, a cemetery, or, whatever. There's just all kinds of things they said that it could be. And it was just very disheartening. I asked kind of like more of like what you see in these big cases where they go out there and like sift through the dirt. Like, what if there were bone fragments? What if they were there at one point and then they were moved? Kind of thing. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know, that didn't really turn out how we wanted it to. Not that we're hoping we find Jennifer and Adrianna. There's always that hope of like, maybe they're still alive, like living a good life somewhere, but we don't believe that. And we just wanted like a little bit more, I don't know, support in that, and just kind of forensic type stuff. And potentially that could have opened a door for us to get a warrant. And that's something that we've been trying to get, and law enforcement's been trying to get for years and years and years. And so we were hoping that would be it, but it wasn't.
I did read something that in 2013, some kind of information got the case changed from a classification of just missing persons to suspected homicide. Is that accurate? And can you expand on what led to that?
It is. Yeah, it is accurate. And quite honestly, we don't know what led to it. I think it was like part of their investigation and just trying to like drum up kind of talk in the town and get people talking and see how certain players moved after that information came out, if you will. But it was changed from, and I think shortly after they disappeared, like it was kind of the opinion of us, and I can't speak for them, but it comes across that way, that it was a homicide, or there was foul play expected from very, very early on. It didn't need to take until 2013. But I think it was kind of like a public kind of ploy to get information from certain people.
It's hard not to think that some kind of foul play happened if there's no sightings of them. They haven't come forward. They haven't, there's no documentation of her using, credit cards. There's no paper trail that they're around still. So foul play seems to be like a common sense, thinking that something happened. There was one thing I also read too, I just wanted to see if you could touch on, was on the Charlie Project's website, it mentions that there was some Florida activity, or possibly a search in Florida or clues in Florida. Is that accurate? And what did that have to do with the case?
I don't know why that's specifically on their website. But yeah, over the years, especially in the beginning, there were, and you can't see me, but doing air quotes, sightings of Jennifer and Adrianna, and the police would follow up on those leads to this day. I just spoke with our TBI agent last week, and he says, we still get leads to this day. Not a lot, but when we get them, like, we have to stop whatever we're working on, not in other cases, but like in our case specifically, because they are supposedly working on something in our case and trying to get some movement in it. And he's like, we got to put that down and we got to work on this. And so that Florida sighting was, I mean, it was just a lead that came in. I mean, there's been Michigan, even parts of Tennessee, like down in Manchester where her dad lives. Like there's been, and my mom, I won't say law enforcement has followed up on all of them. Even my mom spent many, many, many years, going to different states, different areas, like doing her own private investigating. And anytime someone would say something, she would follow up on it. And then same for law enforcement. But I know that specific one was law enforcement did go down and check. And of course, it didn't check out.
It's got to be frustrating to have any kind of hint of a lead, or maybe you get that momentarily, that moment of hope, but then it all comes up that none of it's confirmed, and at the end of the day, there's no answers. And we need to point out too that Joey and his family haven't been charged with any crimes in connection with this case. So certainly innocent until proven guilty. We have to put that caveat out there. You mentioned very early on that I think this caused some long-term friction or division in your family. Is that something you can expand on at all?
Yeah. So my sister met Joey and his family through my cousin, because in 2003 she stayed with them whenever my mom and I moved to Vegas for a job that my mom took. And so she and Adriana stayed with my aunt and her husband, and then they had 2 kids, one around my age, and then the older one, my cousin Jeffrey, he is about Jennifer's age, and Joey was really good friends with Jeffrey. So they were really good friends. That's how she met Joey and got involved with him. And so right after Jennifer and Adrianna disappeared, of course, my aunt's concerned. But Jeffrey, her son, her baby boy, that's his friend, and he didn't think the worst of his friend. He's a high school kid, or right after high school, young. And he just continued hanging out with Joey. So Jennifer's missing. We have a missing persons report. We all believe something happened to her, kind of thing. And he continues this relationship with his friend. And I'm not saying anything towards him. I have spoken to Jeffrey recently, and of course, memory comes into play. He's tried kind of recollecting things for me. But in 2013, when the case was switched to a homicide, they brought in a lot of, like, I call them key players, but they're just like the only people who have kind of information about that time and that all hung out with each other. And my cousin was one of them. Jeffrey was one. And, my aunt kind of reached out to my mom and was like, you need to have them, like, stop questioning my son. Like, this is ridiculous. And my mom's like, I can't tell them who to question. Like, I'm not the police, kind of thing, But after that moment in 2013, we had like a huge family kind of falling out. It was kind of like, y'all believe my son knows more than he's letting on. He's told you everything that he can, kind of thing. And then, I told you I spoke to my cousin recently and have had contact with him, but I've tried reaching out to my aunt just to get, did you really speak to Jennifer that day? Can you remember these things? And she hung up on me, blocked me on social media, refuses to talk to me. So there's just kind of like that division in our family from, just that continued relationship and not believing that my sister's boyfriend and his family could be responsible for foul play. And we're over here on this other side of believing, yes, they absolutely could, because there were all of these red flags and, just their reputation, the things that they were involved in. And like, he was the last person to see him. So we're kind of over here and they were kind of over here. And it's stayed that way, and there's been no cooperation, like as far as them speaking to our private investigators that have tried reaching out to them. It's all just don't speak to me and threatening to lawyer up, that kind of thing. And so I don't know. I mean, they're our family. I don't have contact with them anymore and haven't for years and years and years. So we're obviously not really close, and it's kind of that family dynamic. But like, it just comes across as wrong and suspicious, and yeah, I don't know.
Very, very ugly situation, and just a sort of a part of the ripple effect of this, them going missing in the first place. It's got long-term, long-lasting effects, it sounds like. I know one thing you've done is you've worked to get a reward going. You helped with the governor to get involved. Can you talk a little bit about doing that and what the reward currently is and how that happened?
The reward's still set at $25,000. It's been that way for years and years and years. I mean, I would like that reward to grow, especially as our case gets more attention, and there's GoFundMe's and like change.org and all of that I need to be doing. And it's hard, especially with such an old case, like to get that kind of attention drummed up. But that reward from the governor, I think there's $15,000 from the governor, and he's a past governor. So I'm not sure how that works, but the rest of that, the remaining $10,000, were all personal pledges, which of course I have records of, but from like my mom's employer at the time, family members, and things like that. I mean, even if none of that held up, I mean, I know our family would personally pay anyone. I would pay way more than that for someone to come forward with information to help us get answers. But right now it still stands at $25,000. And yeah, I mean, I know it's out there. I just know that I don't know how all of that works after so long, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's 25,000 reasons for somebody to come forward if they have some information that might help solve the case finally.
Right.
So, you've talked about, you've been advocating for this. You sort of took up the fight to find out what happened after your mom worked on it for so long. Obviously you want to get the word out, and that's why you're doing podcasts and different things like that, trying to spread the word. Is there any websites or social media pages you want people to know about where they can come to learn more about the case, or maybe provide some information that you can pass along to law enforcement, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so you can always contact Robertson County Sheriff's Department or the TBI. The case is handled by both organizations, and they work very closely together. Currently have a really good relationship with both of them. As far as our page, we've had a Facebook page for years and years and years, and I just kind of took that over and add details to it and add kind of, background for Jennifer and Adrianna, and let people get to know them, and any updates and podcast announcements and things like that come about. And our Facebook page is Justice for Jennifer and Adrianna Wix. Same with, there's an Instagram out there, Jennifer and Adrianna Wix, and I also started a TikTok for them to tell their story on there, just to get across all social media channels. But the Facebook page is really probably the biggest one that I keep up to date. And if you go to the Instagram, there's a link tree on there in the bio on the Instagram, and it has all of like the most recent podcasts, like anything current that comes up, it's listed on there. And that's probably the easiest way to kind of get everything, other than the Facebook page and just reading the info on there that I post.
Well, hopefully people will go to those different sites and learn more about the case and share it on social media. I want to wish you well and hope that your family somehow gets answers, because this is a very sad case. Very, it's way too long to be missing your sister and your little niece and not have answers. So I hope you somehow do find out what happened to them.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Missing Persons. If you can provide any information to help solve the case we discussed in this episode, please contact the appropriate authorities.
If you enjoy this podcast, please take a moment to tell your friends about missing persons and invite them to listen to the show. Word of mouth will help us grow and bring these cases to a larger audience. You can also help us by taking a moment to rate and review missing persons on the platform you're listening to us now on. Just a reminder that new episodes of Missing Persons air every other Saturday. If you want to find us on social media, we're on Facebook at facebook.com/missingpersonspod. We're also on Twitter with the handle @missing_pod. And of course, you can find us and contact us through our website, missingpersonspodcast.com. On behalf of Jess Betancourt, this is Mike Morford saying thanks, and we'll see you next time on Missing Persons.